Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome to a new reaction, and this is a FNAF x Transformers crossover would be perfect, and not for the reason you'd think, by ID's Fantasy. So, if you don't know about ID's Fantasy, she's one of the bigger and more prolific FNAF, like Five Nights at Freddy's theorizers that's in the community right now. And I've been a fairly regular watcher of her content for a while. Often does, makes a lot of good videos. But, obviously I don't see everything that gets put out. Thank you, YouTube algorithm. But I came across, I saw this video in my suggestion feed, and saw it was one of the videos I had missed. And, I mean, just that title alone, and the fact that you look in the description, and one of the hashtag things that's in the description is help wanted to Megatron and Michael Afton. Oh god, yeah, that's very, very interesting. Honestly, only thing I can really think of is and help wanted to the newest VR exclusive game. There's one of the collectibles you collect throughout the game are these Fazbear animatronic themed Transformer toys, and in game there's no explanation for them at all. They just sort of appear, and there's you see a trailer for them. It's really weird. These have not been shown or talked about in the franchise at all before this game, and honestly after the game came out they haven't really been talked about at all either. So this is really, that's the only thing I can possibly think of, because that's the only thing I could potentially think of involving a FNAF and Transformers crossover. So definitely gonna have to watch the video to see if I'm actually right on this one. So, I should probably get this thing started. So, yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because over 3/4 of the people that watch my channel aren't subscribed, and I'd very much like that to change, because my main goal for this year is hopefully hit 6,000 subscribers by the end of the year. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
At first glance, one might think that the only real similarities that Five Nights at Freddy's and the Transformers franchises really have are that they both have robots that kill people and include Earth as a setting. After all, when it comes to the franchise about the spirits of children trapped inside animatronic vessels at a Chuck E. Cheese-style pizza restaurant, I'd be surprised if anyone's first thought was, wow, this is just like the franchise about alien robots that turn into cars and fight each other. The thing is, I said at first glance because it turns out that a Transformers FNAF crossover works way better than it has any right to. To the degree that if you told me that the two franchises already took place in the same universe, I would wholeheartedly believe you, and I need the world to know about it. That being said, I do realize that not everyone who's clicked on this video is necessarily familiar with both Five Nights at Freddy's and Transformers, so before I explain—
honestly, I mean, I remember I'm not the biggest Transformers fan, obviously. I mean, my favorite, I kind of peaked in high school when it came to my popularity, because my favorite Transformers show to this day is still Transformers Prime. It also had the best design for RC, and I will fight you on that. Well, yeah, I know some just general, Transformers lore, because again, I know the specifics kind of change from continuity to continuity. But yeah, I mean,
why this crossover works so well, it would probably be good to get everyone on the same page about the important stuff first. Though first, I want to remind and let people know that I've got a makeshift plushie campaign going on for Alex, the little octopus blob that hangs out on my desk. She is very cute and huggable, and the plushie needs to reach 200 total sold by noon Eastern time on August 30th in order to get enough funding to get made. And
this video is 2 weeks old. Is this still a thing? Expired August 30th. Campaign did not reach its minimum. Ah.
It has quite a ways to go, so make sure to get one while you can. Anyway, let's start with Five Nights at Freddy's. There's all the basic stuff, of course, with serial killer William Afton killing a bunch of kids at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in the 1980s, leading to those kids ending up haunting the animatronic characters at Freddy's due to their bodies being hidden inside the animatronics. But what's primarily important here is why this ends up with the animatronics possessed. See, FNAF has this special substance called Remnant that functions as the source of hauntings in the FNAF franchise. It's described as the mixing of the intangible with the tangible, and metal specifically is called out as being a conductor for the non-physical elements, similar to how water conducts electricity. Though technically it's the dissolved ions in the water that conduct the electricity, not the H2O molecules themselves.
Yeah, that's one of those things you learn that, fresh water conducts electricity worse than salt water.
Which aren't actually good conductors, so pure water is a bad conductor, but I digress. Metal being a good conductor for Remnant is likely why, when extracted, Remnant appears as a silvery liquid metal. Remnant is the core of FNAF, as not just the cause of the hauntings, with spirits, memories, and emotions being non-physical elements that end up attached to, usually metal objects, though other materials have ended up possessed in one way or another, but also as the motivating factor for some of FNAF's characters due to some of Remnant's other traits. In the book series where Remnant was first introduced by name, William Afton starts researching Remnant because his business partner Henry Emily was able to create lifelike robot replicas of his daughter Charlie, who William killed, that had an artificial soul contained in a doll thanks to Henry's strong emotions he felt while using the doll as a way to grieve. Additionally, while the games don't go into too much detail about it, another book series uses the descriptors of power, life, and eternal to describe the properties of Remnant. And it's shown that in addition to keeping spirits and memories around, Remnant can be used to increase a character's strength and heal them when they otherwise would have died.
Okay, now I'm thinking, so what does this have to do with Transformers? Honestly, I mean, thinking of my Transformers lore here, I know, like, underneath the armor and stuff like that, the exposed, I don't know, metallic skin of the Transformers is called, like, protoform. It's often described as being, like, soft and flesh-like, but it is metal. Then involving, like, life, there is, the Transformers spark, which is like the equivalent of their soul, but it's like physically in them. They have like a spark chamber and all that. And I mean, depending on the continuity, like some, like, God, again, like there's not, like, this is making me remember, like, I remember one time I actually went down the rabbit hole, like, oh, how do Transformers reproduce? And there was honestly no consistent way that it's described. Like, some are described as, like, oh, they're just literally produced in factories, and, like, they get a spark from the Will of All Spark, which is, like, the pathway to the heart of their god, who is Cybertron Primus, and then he gives them, like, the soul that's put in the body. There was, like, one version where they, like, reproduced via budding, which was really weird. I've seen some where protoforms are like small. I think this was like from Transformers Animated, if I remember correctly. But like protoforms were like small, almost like baby-like looking things. And then like there was like, what was it, like was it Transformers Unleashed? It's like the first CGI one where they turned into animals. Like there was a couple of jokes going on in that show where what was it, Rat Trap? He was kind of like a horn dog that went after like some of the female characters, and he talked about like relatives and like aunts and stuff like that. So there's like some sort of weird, like at the very least, like if not biological reproduction or biological like reproduction, at least like there's like biological family structures. It's like, again, it's so weird.
There are even elements of the books and the games that imply that Remnant has even greater side effects, considering William's son, Michael Afton, is able to get a job in at least one Freddy's location after being brought back to life as a rotted corpse thanks to being injected with Remnant.
Yeah, that's probably why he always did the night shift. It's just, yeah, it's easier that way, not having to be around people.
And in one of the published short stories, a character named Mike that's implied to be Michael due to the shared name and career of Freddy's security guard who knows way too much about the hauntings at Freddy's, is described as looking like a college kid in the year 2015, meanwhile Michael Afton was a teenager in the 1980s, potentially implying some level of both regenerative properties and the usage of Remnant's eternal descriptor as a means to keep him looking the same age he died and was brought back as.
Well, I mean, thinking about it, with that kind of logic, like, given that he did die sometime in the 80s, and was scooped out and, and basically became like a remnant zombie, who's to say, I mean, obviously you have the remnant keeping him alive, however that works in universe, but then you also could have it just be that, you know, he died, and so his physical body, while you have the remnant keeping it from, like, rotting any further, it's not like it's actually growing old, because it's just sort of stuck there in, like, a stasis or something like that.
Even decades later. That being said, there are technically different kinds of remnant. In the now defunct AR mobile game, the player collects free-floating remnant energy in a variety of colors, and if too much dark remnant, which appears purple, is collected, a special character named RWQFSFASXC makes an appearance and attacks the player. Don't worry, that name is not relevant for the rest of the video. Presumably, this dark remnant is...
We just call him Shadow Bonnie.
Sourced from agony, which in the FNAF universe is considered the strongest emotion in terms of potency and ability to linger. Hence why William pursued his remnant research by causing immense pain and death to small children, thereby leading to most of the stuff that ends up happening in the FNAF franchise. Meanwhile, the world building between different Transformers continuities is a lot less consistent than Five Nights at Freddy's tends to be. For example, while the world mechanics of Remnant stay the same between FNAF's books and games and movie, the in-universe origin of the Transformers characters that I'm going to be primarily focusing on here does not match the original cartoon's origins for them at all whatsoever.
Yeah, that's one of those things again. Like I said, in high school, I was a very avid Transformers Prime fan. And from what I remember, they don't really go that in-depth about how you make new Transformers. Like, there is one episode where they come across protoforms in, like, in an ancient crashed, like, science ship or something like that. And Starscream uses it to make clones of himself. But, like, it's, like, very vague and non-specific. So much so that, I mean, I'll show you here. I was very much into fanfiction back in the day. But if we hop over to the old fanfiction.net account, if we go over to favorites, and I just sort through, you know, all stories that are in Transformers. Yeah, that's 145 stories right there, and I'm fairly certain if a few of them have been, like, lost over the years just from people closing down their accounts.
That being said, as time's gone on, there are things about the Transformers lore that generally tend to stay consistent between iterations, and honestly, even if there isn't a continuity that has every single thing I mention here, one day there could be, and everything I talk about will be from an actual Transformers continuity to the best of my knowledge in one way or another. Anyway, for those who aren't super familiar with the Transformers lore, the main focus of the franchise is typically on the civil war between the Autobots, led by Optimus Prime, and the Decepticons, led by Megatron, which started on the Transformers' home planet Cybertron, but ended up on Earth after Cybertron was out of resources and unable to sustain Cybertronian life. Said war is usually the result of Optimus and Megatron trying to lead a revolution against an evil government, and then having a very messy friendship divorce over their political differences.
Again, Transformers 1 was such a good movie. Again, still angry. Again, so angry it didn't do better.
Specifically, Optimus Prime and the Autobots are pro-freedom and anti-unnecessarily killing people, while Megatron and the Decepticons have more of a might makes right and the only way for me to not be hurt is to hurt everyone first mentality. This particular detail isn't super relevant to the world-building stuff that makes the crossover make sense, but it will be more relevant when I talk about how a crossover would actually work in practice. Anyway, while the Cybertronian Civil War is typically the main...
Oh god, you know what I just remembered? Oh god, I can't remember where. Was this on Twitter? It was on somewhere. I specifically remember a piece of fan art I came across like years ago. And it was like, you know those art where like you have artists like combining two characters into one? I remember I saw a picture somebody had done where they had combined Transformers Prime RC with Chica from the first FNAF. Man, that brings back memories. Wow, that was weird.
Plot of Transformers, there are a few major pieces of world building that are also important to be aware of. For one thing, the planet Cybertron isn't just a planet. It's actually a giant transformer named Primus that turned into a planet, who also happens to be the Cybertronian creator deity and counterpart to Unicron, not Unicorn, whose domain is chaos and destruction.
God, I remember that was a joke in Transformers Prime as well.
His turning into Cybertron allowed him to use his life force to create and sustain mechanical life via an artifact called the Allspark and a substance called Energon. The Allspark is what creates sparks, which are essentially the heart and soul of a Transformer, and the Allspark presumably has something to do with the creation of their bodies as well. Without the Allspark, new Transformers can't be created, and in the wrong hands, the Allspark can be a dangerous weapon for whoever has it. Additionally, the Allspark functions as the Transformer afterlife, with sparks returning to it once they're extinguished, though sometimes deceased Cybertronians can appear in spirit forms under specific circumstances. Meanwhile, Energon is technically blood, food, and a general energy source all at the same time.
Yeah, that's another one of those things that through like research has been like really sort of uncertain about over the years. Like, if you go back to my favorite, Transformers Prime, Energon was just sort of like a thing that was there. It was like a mineral, like, you know, big green crystals that was mined and then refined into like the liquid that the Transformers drank as fuel and stuff like that. But I remember, like, I think I was watching a review of like Transformers, like Gen 1, like, you know, the original Transformers cartoon from like the 80s. And, like, there was a plot in there where, like, the Transformers could just manufacture Energon, but they required, like, external energy. So, like, there was, like, a Decepticon plot where they were gonna, like, take over, like, an oil rig or, like, a power plant or something and just use it to create, like, Energon or something like that. It was, like, and it varies from, like, from continuity to continuity. I remember that was one of the things in Transformers 1, where the reason why they actually had to mine Energon was because the Matrix of Leadership was missing, so the planet was not producing like Energon itself anymore. So that's why they had to mine it. But then once Optimus but then when Optimus actually became Optimus later on and got the Matrix of Leadership, he was able to basically get the planet, you know, working again.
Does Energon being blood and food technically mean Cybertronians are vampires? Probably. Either way, Transformers need it to function.
I mean, you could classify, you know, gasoline as the blood and fuel of a car. Like, no, like, blood? I mean, no, that is coolant, but... Actually, no, now that I'm saying it out loud, that's weird.
And without it, they either die or essentially go comatose until they're given more. And it's this Energon that makes this entire crossover idea make sense. See, natural Energon can take on a variety of forms, such as raw ore, crystals, liquid, or pure energy. But kinds of Energon usually fall into two main categories. There's your standard Energon, which is the lifeblood of Primus and his creations, and dark Energon, the blood of Unicron. While both kinds of Energon...
Yeah, and then if you go by... Actually, I don't know if it was shown in any other of the cartoons, but then in Transformers Prime, again, I'm referring to Transformers Prime a lot in this video, but, like, they had, like, synthetic Energon, which they had for a bit, but that had, like... Oh, yeah, it was usable as an energy source, but it also had, like, the properties of, like, steroids as well, where you had Ratchet, who's the old cranky, like, medic of Team Prime. When he took it, he became, like, a lot stronger, but also, like, a lot more aggressive and stuff like that. It's really funny.
Are primarily found with their respective Cybertronian deity, they can sometimes be found in smaller quantities on planets, including Earth. In addition to being a Cybertronian's usual power source, Primus-sourced Energon has a special subcategory that in English is called rarefied Energon and in other languages translates to refined Energon, which doesn't function as fuel, but rather as the building blocks of mechanical life, with the Transformer's spark and body being made of the substance. Meanwhile, a dark Energon typically has a weakening effect on Energon-based beings, as the two kinds of Energon can neutralize each other. But dark Energon can also have a corrupting influence on Transformers. When consumed, it leads to an increase in power and aggression in the user, and has the ability to heal and bring back the dead.
As zombies. Yep, as Transformer zombies.
Usually as mindless zombies.
Yeah,
now, these descriptors may sound a bit familiar. Metal with a soul, an energy source that can be pure energy, a liquid or a solid that provides life and power, a substance that can heal and bring back the dead, a dark counterpart that has extra strength to it that's purple in color. I don't know about you, but to me, Energon in Transformers sounds a whole lot like Remnant in Five Nights at Freddy's. And this is what makes a crossover between the two work so well and have so much potential. All you have to do, really, is make it so that Remnant is the human name for Energon, and suddenly you've got perfect crossover material. Now
I'm curious. Give me a second here. Okay. I might have to do some research after this, see how this works out, because I remember, again, thinking back to my heyday as a fan fiction reader, I remember the main thing I saw a lot of the time, you know, FNAF paired up with when it came to, like, semi-crossover material was the SCP Foundation. So, like, now I'm really curious as to how somebody would play with, you know, the idea of FNAF. Oh, God. You know, I just thought of something. Like, again, one of my favorite, like, sub-genres of Transformers fanfiction back in the day, specifically when it came to, like, Transformers Prime, was, like, the stories where, like, the human kids became Transformers. Like, you know, some process, whether unnatural or otherwise, like, turned them into Transformers and stuff like that. And you'd have the whole thing where they have to get used to the new bodies, and they actually get to fight with, like, their Transformers friends and help them out and stuff like that. But thinking about it, like, having Remnant, the ability to have, like, the soul actually put into metal, and potentially having it be, like, the human equivalent or the human name for Energon, or maybe even refined Energon, since it's more, like, memories and souls and stuff like that. Maybe that could be a way you could work out of Transformers and FNAF, like a crossover. Have the oh god, no! You have the animatronics with their human souls controlling them be turned into Transformers. Oh god, that'd be weird.
Cybertronians' bodies and sparks would be entirely made of remnant metal, rarefied energon, explaining how they're able to be considered alive and have spirits, despite not being made of a material that typically constitutes alive, with their long natural lifespans being connected to Remnant's eternal nature. Similarly, Primus and Unicron would be entities that are conscious and have the power they do because they'd be made of massive amounts of pure remnant and dark agony-infused remnant respectively. Primus sacrificing his life force to create Cybertron and its people would be Primus using the remnant that is literally himself and his life force to create and sustain them. Dark Energon has a corrupting influence because that's what Agony does in Five Nights at Freddy's, where it can act as an evil infection that needs to be burned out. Remnant is a source of power just as Energon is, and can technically have non-metal forms like Energon does, since there are non-metal objects that get haunted in FNAF. And hey, both franchises have a whole thing about a robot's eyes turning red, showing they're becoming hostile and aggressive, which might not technically be an Energon Remnant thing, but it happens with a haunted animatronic and a Cybertronian, so it works for me. Sure, there's basically no shot that things were intended to work as well as they do, but from a world building perspective, it works pretty dang well. So if the world building works, how about the story? This is where things get slightly more complicated because the plot of ghosts haunting a pizza restaurant chain over the course of a few decades is a bit smaller scale than thousands to millions years worth of alien civil war. But I think there are a few ways to make things work depending on which franchise you might want to lean more into.
I mean, okay, so I could potentially, so seeing it as you have, like, the Transformers human companions, like, you know, they're young, they need a job, so they work at, you know, Fazbear at, like, as a night guard potentially. They see the animatronics, they hide and, like, protect themselves. They call, I mean, depending on if, you know, the phones actually work or if they have cell reception, but they actually call their Transformers friends, say that they're in danger. They come in, you know, maybe even partially destroy the restaurant. And, like, to protect their human companions, they capture the animatronics to study them because, hey, what's going on with these weird things? Why are they trying to hurt our human friends? And then at that point, they discover, hey, wait, these things have refined energon in them. How is this happening? What's going on? You know, something like that. But then, like, the news and the knowledge of being able to actually, quote-unquote, manufacture refined energon gets leaked to, like, the Decepticons somehow, and then they start, like kidnapping humans to, like, turn them into Remnant to start manufacturing, like, new Cybertronian warriors instead of just, like, Viacons, which I think most of the time are just called, like, drones, essentially. Oh, okay. I mean, I've never been one to write, and I'll probably never write this either, but I'm getting ideas.
One option, of course, is to flat out make the FNAF characters Cybertronians. This is somewhat inspired by the Fast Force commercial in the FNAF game Help Wanted 2, which has the animatronic characters as action figures of robots that proportionately look a whole lot like Transformers, and combine into one bigger robot like Combiners and Transformers do.
I mean, okay, I wouldn't personally like that, but I do know, again, there's the whole thing with, you know, Transformers being able to turn into giant robotic animals instead of vehicles. So yeah, I could see that. I mean, like, granted, I'm pretty sure there are already, like, some of those that, you know, could transform into a bear. So, like, giant fox, chicken, rabbit. Yeah, I could definitely see it. Honestly, the only weird one out there would be the marionette.
William Afton could be a Cybertronian scientist researching Energon who finds out about Dark Energon, goes nuts over it, experiments on sparks, and so on. Honestly, Springtrap even sounds like it would work well as a Cybertronian name, so I think there's a lot of potential there. Or
Yeah, I
you
guess
could
you
just
could,
focus
yeah.
on including the more supernatural elements of Remnant into the standard Transformers story with
Actually, going back to, you know, again, I'm talking about I'm talking about my history with fanfiction so much here. That's one of those things, because again, like, when I was younger, my favorite chip was always Jack and RC. And that's part of the reason why I liked, you know, human turning into Transformers story so much, because it allowed them to actually be able to have, like, a long life together and stuff like that without, you know, the problems of human fragility. That was one of those things, like, you know, obviously Transformers have, like, very mechanical names. Like, some of them are just named after tools. But, like, I remember a couple of stories where Jack they would have him change his name to be more fit in with, you know, Transformers. But at the end of the day, like, Jack, like, Car Jack, like, Jacks are a thing in machines. You wouldn't have to change his name at all.
without the rest of the FNAF stuff. Maybe Cybertronians as remnant-based beings tend to accidentally haunt their surroundings, even without dying, thanks to the staying power of emotion and memory. Or
okay, well, I mean, that being said, I do know that I think it was in, like, the Transformers comics, or at least one of the Transformers comics. I know there's a couple of them. I know Starscream, for a while, was a ghost that just haunted things. So, he's like, he had a special spark that could last, like, after death, and he just went around haunting things. It was really weird.
Or they end up getting haunted easily by other Cybertronians due to being made of metal and remnant themselves. But considering how well the world building already works without changing any of the characters, it actually wouldn't be too difficult to just combine the two stories. Usually, Cybertronian contact with Earth happens because Cybertron has lost the Allspark or no longer has Energon, or both. And the Autobots and Decepticons have to leave the planet to look for the missing life-giving important stuff as a result. Something like that would probably also work best for this crossover, and there are a couple ways that I could see it going. Maybe something happens where the Autobots and or Decepticons end up landing or crashing in southern Utah. They wouldn't have to, of course, but there is a good amount of empty space in the area around Hurricane, Utah, where Five Nights at Freddy's takes place.
I mean, again, I'm sorry to be talking about Transformers Prime so much in this, but again, Transformers Prime takes place in the middle of in a small town in Nevada, so it's honestly not that different.
That would put them close enough for the crossover to be convenient. If not, Cybertron does have portal technology, so they could use that to get to the area from wherever they're actually stationed.
Yeah.
If they're looking for Energon, maybe the remnant at Freddy's or wherever else William is stashing his remnant experiment stuff ends up coming up on their scanners as a potential Energon deposit. And when they go to investigate, they end up finding out about the guy who figured out how to essentially create Energon, but did so through murdering children and getting their souls trapped inside animatronics. Whether they learn that by talking to Michael or figuring out how to communicate with the spirits, the Autobots would probably be horrified by the situation since they've got their whole thing about autonomy and protection of innocent life. Meanwhile, if the Decepticons found out about it, I could see them being like, wait, if we kill humans next to metal stuff, it can create Energon? Sounds better than draining our own troops, Energon, sign us up. It could also be interesting to have a scenario where a Cybertronian accidentally ends up too close to a recently dead human body, and then the original Cybertronian occupant and the human are stuck as roommates in the body until the human haunting them is able to move on. Or maybe a human dies next to a Transformer whose spark went out, and then the human's spirit ends up functionally possessing the Transformer's dead body, much to the shock and horror of everyone.
Yeah, that would be definitely very freaky.
Or maybe the Autobots adopt the haunted animatronics to try and help them cope with their circumstances if the spirits can't move on. Because in a way, they'd be not too far off from really, really young Cybertronians in less than ideal bodies. Potentially, the Autobots could transfer their remnant into bodies that let them be themselves instead of primarily the characters they were forced to become thanks to the animatronics programming and whatnot. And that's just on the Energon-focused side of things. That's not even getting into what you could do if everyone was looking for the Allspark. Like, what if William Afton found that thing and was using it for remnant experiments? The Allspark was able to bring to life all sorts of machines and turn them into Transformers. Can you imagine the havoc that William could get up to if he figured out how to use that thing? What if he used it on the animatronics? Or his remnant injector? Or on himself if he got a hold of it while he was Springtrap? You could have some pretty interesting situations to explore, and both the Autobots and Decepticons would probably take interest in one way or another, considering they both want to get the Allspark, and would probably have feelings about William making his own Cybertronians. And that's all just really loose concepts that could be
And I mean, thinking back, I mean, granted, you know, Transformers movies, which are, you know, their own thing, but like the idea, you turn like the animatronics into Cybertronians, maybe after they're already haunted. So, but like the idea, like, oh, not only do you have to worry about, you know, these animatronics that are coming to kill you, you have to worry about them, like their arms reassembling themselves into like swords and like blades and like energy cannons, like. God, that that would be a bit unfair now that I'm thinking about it.
Be used as a base for a larger crossover story. I'd come up with something more detailed, but I unfortunately do not have the time. Either way, I think the crossover potential is way higher than it has any right to be, and I needed people to know about it as soon as possible. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please consider buying the Alex plushie so that it can get funded enough to actually get made if you can. Don't get stabbed, and have a nice day.
Well, okay. I mean, that was certainly something. I mean, thinking about it, I mean, again, oh god, I gotta go back, see if there's any, like, new-ish, you know, stories that might be good to read. Because honestly, I have not read, like, fanfiction, like, actively in a long time. I mean, like, I still have, I mean, I remember I made an account on, like, AO3, but, like, honestly, looking up stuff on that is so much more annoying than fanfiction.net. I'm gonna be completely honest there. Like, granted, I mean, the ability to have, like, tags on the stories, so, you know, a person looking can have, like, a better idea of, like, what they're looking at, but at the same time, there's no, like, universal tag, so there's some people, I've seen from, like, some stories, some people make, like, tags that are so super specific, I don't think you'd ever think to look for them, like, normally otherwise. That would certainly be something. I'm gonna have to, like, maybe on, like, when I'm rendering tomorrow or tonight, whenever, like, look up a couple of those stories with the, like, the crossovers on fanfiction.net and see what some of them actually are. That might be interesting. But yeah, that's definitely going to be it for now. So yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.